What fact is common knowledge to people who work in your field, but almost unknown to the rest of the population? There is a period of time every year that in the US, the Department of Transportation pulls over any and every truck that they can. During this period many trucking companies take vacation time, as the potential hassle is not worth the money made during this time. That every plastic piece in your car needs a steel mold that costs in the range from 10 to 250k. Not my current field, but when I worked at Starbucks not a lot of people understood that a larger espresso drink does not always equals more caffeine. A tall drink has 1 shot, Grand has 2, and a venti also has 2, unless it's iced, and then it gets a 3rd shot. So many times customers would order a Grand Lat and say, you know what, you'd better make that a venti. I can use the extra caffeine, when in fact the larger size is just more diluted with milk. If you are looking for more caffeine, a drip coffee is going to be the most bang for your buck. Also, this seems really obvious, but a lot of people would get upset when they ordered a flavored coffee and saw that I would put syrup in it. No, coffee beans do not naturally come in caramel, vanilla, toffee nut, raspberry etc. flavor. More people die in lifeboat drills than they do in any other marine incidents. The maximum spacing between spindles in a railing is 4 inches because that's the average size of a baby's head. Most building officials will carry a 4-inch sphere with them when doing inspections on new construction. Coffee shops spend more on milk than coffee. The toner in your printer is plastic being melted onto the paper. Being a civil attorney, we almost never go to jury trial and the job can be unbelievably boring. The best treatment for a child with anxiety is treating their parents' anxiety. Office copiers cost upwards of $7,000. Some can go for $15,000 to $20,000 depending on print speed and capacity. Nominal pipe diameters are not indicative of their actual diameter. So a 1-inch pipe is rarely actually 1 inch in either outside or inside diameter. Why? I have no idea. But if you drill a hole of exact diameter and stick that pipe in there, you're going to have a bad time. I worked as an insurance adjuster. Most people have no idea what homeowner's insurance actually does. Here is a very simple guide to understanding what is covered by homeowners insurance. A sudden and one-time occurrence. While there are some exceptions to this, understanding those few words will help you understand 95% of what is and is not covered by your policy. Note, my experience applies to US insurance only. There is a surprising amount of infrastructure under your feet. You'd be surprised how much public utility runs underneath private property. Always call before you dig. Virtually every piece of copper, aluminum, or steel you come across has been chopped to bits, refined, melted down and used to make whatever object it's a part of. Dozens, if not hundreds of times. Copper pipe probably started out as hundreds of different wires from various devices from around the world at one point. Neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson, starts way before the first symptoms appears. No one wake up suddenly one day with Alzheimer's. From actual data, it seems that the disease is rampant for 10 to 15 years before the first symptoms. Some research say that you can start identifying abnormalities 20 plus years before the memory loss begin. And it works for all neurodegenerative diseases are fake. You would think all the heavily relied upon server infrastructures were super secure and highly redundant. In some museums, what you see on the shelves can be less than 10% of the whole collection. For example, the Louvre has over 460,000 items in their collection, and only has space to display about 35,000 of those, roughly 7.6% of their total collection. Due to limited physical space, and for aesthetic purposes, most items in museums stay back in storage and/or archives. Plus, most items need to be maintained at certain temperatures and light. If we can't meet those needs, it will never be allowed for public viewing, ever. There are most likely some of the most amazing, visually stunning pieces of artwork that you or anyone will never get to see. Bonus, accession and deaccession can also be a touchy area. Just because it's old doesn't mean we are going to take it and add it to the collections, and we try to be nice to people who are disappointed we won't take their precious family heirlooms. Other times, it's easier just to say, yeah, we don't want that. Edited, for correct percentage of the Louvre's collection. It's slower than I thought. Edited again, For those who are asking, I have a BA in art history and a master's in museum studies. I presently work as a digital preservation librarian in the archives and special collections of a university and have worked in numerous museums or universities all over the world. It's been quite a fulfilling job. I've handled artwork from Michelangelo, Rembrandt, Warhol, Pollock, Picasso, and many more. Ask away, and I'll answer if I can. In scoring for film, the orchestra/ensemble actually plays the music live as the movie is played behind them. It is recorded and synced. Edit should have specified the conductor, who is usually the composer, stands facing the screen and has a small screen in front of them with different colored bars to indicate starting/stopping and pace, as well as other cues and insets. Composers have watched the film beforehand and are often frequent collaborators with certain directors. In jewelry, a diamond is a luxury expense, not an investment. Gold is the investment. If you try to sell your engagement ring, you'll get maybe 20% of what you initially paid for it. Jewelers can get diamonds for a fraction of what you paid for it. An elevator will go up to the top of the hoist instead of crash to the floor in most catastrophic failures due to the counterweights. Not everyone who works in a library is a librarian. Bonus: librarians have master's degrees. Most 911 calls an ambulance receives on a daily basis are not remotely close to being emergencies. Your new house you just built probably has much better insulation than your old house from the 70s. Since the house is much more energy efficient, the size of the furnace and/or air conditioner may be smaller than what you had at your old house, even if the new house is larger. No, we can't use rules of thumb to size your HVAC equipment, no matter what Google says. We have to use a load calculation, and that has to be approved by the building department. Bonus: having an HVAC system that runs all the time but just barely gets you to the temperature you want is more energy efficient than a larger system that turns off and on all of the time, even if it seems like the system is running constantly. Heartworms are treatable for dogs, but not for cats. Also, keep on top of your heartworm prevention for your dog if they get heartworm, but you can prove that they've been continually covered, which isn't difficult. The receipts are good enough, and your vet will have them in their database. Then the heartworm prevention manufacturer will pay for the treatment. Man, I love that you all love your pets. I'm a sign language interpreter. This is based off the comments I get from the general hearing population. 1. We do not take care of or help the deaf person. We work for them same as we are working for you. 2. No, I'm not related to this deaf person. I'm not even friends with them. Most herbal supplements can and will give you adverse/side effects when mixed with other medications. Always tell your doctor everything you're taking. Just because a disabled child/person is nonverbal, that doesn't necessarily mean they can't understand everything you're saying. It's crazy how often I have to tell my own staff to watch what they're saying. These kids still get embarrassed or upset if you talk about the massive shit they just took right in front of the whole class. A radiologic technologist, X-ray tech, is not a radiologist. Radiologists are doctors. All processes begin as top of the line and then may end up lower because they didn't make the threshold. Explaining with an example. Intel only tries to make i9 processors. Let's say they have 16 cores. Since the process of making these is hard, only 20 to 30% have all cores working. Next they see the amount processors with more than or equal to 8 cores. Disable extra cores just to make sure only 8 cores work and ship them as i7. Next 4, 5, 6 and 7 in all only 4 cores are left working and shipped as i5. 2 and 3 only 2 cores are left operating and all others are switched off, shipped as i3. Hope that makes sense. Also, this was a hypothetical example. Not all facts may be accurate. They should be, but just in case. Also, this is done to minimize wastage, which in turn makes these things cheaper. So it's a win-win for all. Also, this isn't just done by Intel. Snapdragon, AMD all do it. So when you hear Nvidia is unable to meet the supply of their top tier card, it's not because they didn't try hard enough. It is because they keep failing to reach the benchmarks they expect in their top tier cards and sell them as low tier because the yield is low. Note, this is a very difficult process, and checking for mistakes in each piece at 14 nm is not possible, since verification is a destructive process. So if something is wrong, generally a batch gets screwed. Edit. Thanks for the silver. My first silver. Important edit. This is a bit oversimplified. Low-end processors are also made, but they require setting up an entire assembly line, and thus are only done if there is a high demand and a very high probability of significantly better yield. Also, cores are not just the only parts disabled. The first thing you do, if you think your computer is being hacked, is unplug it from the network, or disable the Wi-Fi. As a user interface designer in the US, we hate having to localize the text for use in Germany, because German words can be ridiculously long compared to most other languages. You don't defibrillate a systole, flatline cardiac rhythm, like they do on TV. It's a non-shockable rhythm. Maps and their underlying data can be tweaked and modified to show any bias you want. There is no difference between a violin and a fiddle other than how you play it. Drowning is silent. I pulled out a kid literally less than a foot away from a large group of adults, and not one of them noticed that his head was totally submerged and that he was struggling. When you delete a file from your hard disk, only the information of how to reach these memory slots coherently is deleted. The raw information remains there until overwritten. That's why companies should destroy their disks on decommission instead of just formatting them. Military grade does not mean it's awesome. When you write to your politician, he won't be reading your letter, he won't be writing the reply. That's all done by staffers. All he does is sign here